All right, welcome back. And with us again tonight is the Iron Maidens FTC Team 9205. And they are going to talk to us tonight about FMEA, Failure Mode and Effects Analysis. All right, take it away, ladies.
Today we will be talking about the previously mentioned Failure Modes Effects Analysis. This stands for Failure Modes Effects Analysis. So we're going to start with the layout. It looks relatively complicated at first, but I promise it gets more simple as you go through it. So this is the first page of our FMEA table from last season, and the general layout of the table when we first started using it. The first row is for general information, like date, type of failure. The others on this page go into categories such as risk priority. On the next page, we have what we have learned from it and how we fixed it. So if the mistake is ever made again, we can fix it with ease. We will go over this all in detail later, but this is the general layout of the table. We were also given a template which makes it much easier. So at the end of this presentation, we will be providing you with a template to start making an FMEA table much easier.
Now I'll go over how to use it efficiently. It's going to go by a step-by-step process, and a link to this presentation will also be provided at the end. You start by picking the type of failure, like driver failure, electrical failure, and many more. If it's unique, you can insert your own. Next, you put in what the failure affected or where it affected, such as the battery, bumpers, or more. Next, you describe the failure in greater detail by answering these questions. What could/did go wrong? What effect does this have on the robot, or how did the failure occur? By filling these in, you can look back on pretty much every part of the failure. Now is the risk priority, one of the most important parts. All that's required is rating the failure on the 1 to 4 scale. The baseline scale is provided with the template. I found it useful, so I didn't change it, but if you'd like, you can change it. The formula for risk priority into the table is =G3 times H3 times I3, which calculated these 3 boxes for risk priority. Going down the table, the formula should change to G4 times H4 times I4 and so forth. The Google Sheet should do this automatically, but there is some room for a computer error, which I have encountered, and ironically, you'd record this in the table that's having the failure. Risk priority itself is calculated in a pretty simple way. The first step is to detect the failure mode, like the battery falling out, for example, so you have a baseline on what you need to fix. Step 2 is the severity, how severe the failure is. Step 3 is probability, how often is this going to happen? Step 4 is detection, is it hard to detect or is it very obvious? You take these answers and multiply them together, which gives you your risk priority. You find these numbers by the 1 to 4 scale I showed earlier, and then you repeat the process, and there you go. Now we're moving on to the last few columns. These 3 columns are about fixing it and what you learned. For example, when we recorded our battery falling out, we learned that the phone needed to be more secure on the robot with Velcro of some sort instead of relying on the phone mount. In the next section, you put down who is responsible for it. Last but not least, once the failure is prevented or corrected, you write down your actions you took to fix it. So if the failure is repeated, you know how to fix it.
Sorry, I was muted. This is our current FMEA table. We do not have much there besides an example to look back on if it ever confused about the concept. But, excuse me. But the example did happen in a previous season when the battery flew out and hit our power button, rendering our robot useless. It's pretty rare, but it still happened. You can see the risk priority formula in action. Our battery kept falling out about once a competition, so it was ranked to 3. It completely shut down the robot, so the severity was a 4, and detection really put its score in the lower numbers, because how can you not notice your battery falling out and rendering your robot useless? Everything above a 15 highlights the risk priority in bright red so that you know it needs to be fixed as soon as possible. The FMEA table we were given has pit checklists and graphs to make a tournament run smoother. Our PIT checklist is just some basic necessities of competition, as you can see in the picture above. Once checked off, you can see it goes into a darker color. Excuse me. So you know that it has been completed. We also have an FMEA table separate from our main one. This is completely dedicated to matches, with a specific column for match number and a graph that's connected to its input. I am sorry, excuse me. On this page, we have a chart connected to the original FMEA table that tells us how many types of failures we've experienced. This is not a requirement of the FMEA table, but it makes the data a lot easier to understand and narrow down what needs to be worked on the most. Let's say that we record a programming failure, a driver failure, and then another programming failure. As you can see, the table takes this and turns it into graphs. This feature is great for the engineering notebook and showing the parts of the robot we need to focus on improving.
Now we're going to be doing a demonstration, and it is going to be interactive, and another one of our team members is going to be telling us the questions, but keep in mind the lag. So can someone give me hold on, we're having problems. Can someone give me a failure to put into the FMEA, preferably robotics related, but I guess whatever gets the point across?
While we're waiting, Lizzie, what's another failure that our robot has seen?
We've had quite a few. We've had some programming failures. We had this one electrical failure where we had no power to both the rev hubs. But we don't know how that happened. It just happened.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons we have an FMEA table, is to better understand those failures.
So color sensor coming unplugged min-match.
Right. And this is going to be put into the template with the link that is on our Instagram, so you guys will be able to access this. So it will be...
It's also not up on our Instagram yet, but it will be later today.
Oh, okay. So if it would be a color sensor, this would be electrical. So you just press the little arrow button, you have a bunch of options. And there's your other option if you want to input your own. But this would be a electrical failure. The function that it affected, we have a lot of things for this. Don't think it has a sensor one, so we can input our own sensor. In what ways can/ did the item fail to meet the design goal or deliverables? What can/ did go wrong? So what was the exact failure again, Amy?
It was color sensor coming unplugged min-match.
Okay. So what is the effect on the robot for each failure mode? So that would just be unable to use the color sensor. So how can/ did the failure occur? I'm going to assume if this happened, it was the wires weren't secure enough or just not put very well in place. So make sure wires are secure and can handle, and can just, I guess, handle rougher play. So I'm assuming they didn't say anything of how often it would happen. I guess like once a season, maybe this would happen. If it's not fixed right away, it would happen routinely. I guess it would work not as well. Some things wouldn't go very well, probably autonomous, but for teleop, you'd most likely be fine. you should be able to detect it pretty easily. So, because you'll be able to see that it's just not working anymore. So hopefully that calculates it. Yep, it's at a 6 now. So you move past, we have our risk priority calculated for us. And then our short-term actions. Let's say you're in a competition and this happens. Once the match is ended, you have your things. You could use a zip tie to fix it. Let's say that's what you did. Zip tie the wires. Detect this cause and lead to corrective actions, or detect the failure. Okay. A lot of times you'd go more in depth, but this is just going to be the basics on how to do it. Lessons learned. Double check. Guess wiring or sensors before the match begins. Recommended long-term actions. I don't deal with much electronics. I'm sure there's a way to make sure your wires are fully in place, but I am not personally aware of them. So I guess more secure zip ties or Velcro or something along those lines. And I don't really know what to put in owner, but since Amy told me the question, I'm just going to put Amy. Corrections completed. I think that's up to whoever fixed it to put in. I don't think that's really something we can demonstrate, but I think you guys get the idea. Okay, so we're going back. Do you guys have any questions?
Maybe Lizzie, while we're waiting for a question, you could talk about how much time it takes to learn the FMEA table, to like use it in action.
Well, it takes a pretty short time to learn. Once you do your first thing actually putting it in, you get the hang of it pretty easily, but it takes a little bit to like be able to like see a failure and immediately identify like all the different types. And inputting that information is definitely not a short process, since you need to ask questions of everyone on the team, like drivers and everything, to make sure that's what it was, and instead of just a driver failure. So I guess one input would take, I don't know, 15 minutes depending on the situation.
Okay.
So our first question is, how many entries do you typically have?
Well, last year we first started our FMEA table and it was a little rough. We didn't do it as often as we should, but if you do it routinely and keep on top of it, about a full season, I guess maybe like 15 to 30 entries, depending on what you're counting as a failure. If you count every minor thing as a failure, you're going to have like 30 or above. But if you're only focusing on the ones that render your robot useless, or you can like very plainly see and are very high risk priority, then you're going to have closer to like the 15 range.
Is it one person's responsibility for this form? Do you put it in your engineering notebook?
We do have a section for our engineering notebook. I think it goes under like the engineering section itself, but I'm the lead for it. But we all kind of partake in it. Like if that failure is what you like specialize in, like if you're a builder or a programmer or a driver, then you put that failure in yourself. But I'm in charge of making sure that everyone does that and double checking it to make sure we're doing it correctly.
Yeah, and for us, we actually put that within the engineering overview section. And then I'm actually curious because I don't know a ton about the table, but Lizzie, how would you put in an entry if you had one problem and fixed it, but then you had the problem happen again?
I guess you'd have to delete like part of the thing you filled out, like the corrections you took, because obviously they didn't work very well. I guess you'd have to go back and delete the correcting parts, put in that you did this and it didn't work, and then fill in what you're now going to do to correct it and hope it doesn't happen again.
Lizzie, what do you think's the most tricky part about the FMEA table?
Probably all of the detail you have to go into, because it's just a lot of detail. Like, you can have paragraphs in this tiny column, and sometimes it's hard to just look at. There's a lot of information in one place. I guess that's the hardest part. Also, making sure everyone does it. That's going to be really difficult because first we have to teach them how and everything.
Excuse me. Excuse me.
Did you have more mechanical programming or driver's errors last year?
I think we had more programming failures, but I will have to check that. Hold on a second. Oh, sorry, Amy.
That was
Yeah, the majority was electrical and programming failures.
in the end, was it worth documenting all your failures?
Yes, it definitely was, because we did have repeat electrical problems, like I said, and it was pretty useful to look back on it and be able to like, oh, this is happening more than once. We really need to focus on this, because it was very hard to detect and it took us a little bit to get on top of it. So I would say it was definitely worth it.
Yeah, and I think at first what some teams might be like, there is a time commitment to set up the FMEA table. But if you think about it, you're going to have to fix these problems anyways. And in the long run, if you use this method, it's going to mean you can be a lot faster at fixing issues and you'll know that your solutions will last.
Do we want to do maybe another example one? Because I have two more like fake ones. If you
Yeah,
want to
sure.
do that.
Let's just go back.
So robot doesn't move during autonomous.
Okay, so we're about now. Have we had that failure before?
I don't know.
The robots?
And then another question is, do you anticipate issues you might have, or do you only document the ones you've experienced?
we only document the ones we've experienced, except like our example, because the example, I only have one example programmed in here, but you can program another one, because when you scroll down, that example stays there, so when you're inputting it, you can look back on it and see, oh, is this what I'm really supposed to be doing? And just double checking your own work, so that's why it's programmed to stay there.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you can preemptively do this, but it's probably more helpful to do it in the moment. And like, if you fix a certain failure, you'll likely be able to prevent future related failures as well.
Hold on, I just put that in the wrong spot. Even I am having a person error. Why did it? Okay, anyway. What did go wrong? I guess we don't have very much details about the failure, so I'm just going to put in something decently vague. This isn't what we normally do, but we don't have like the vast amount of information you do when you're in person. autonomous. And sometimes this is going to happen where the text just isn't doing what it's supposed to. It's supposed to be doing that. You just have to highlight it and go into this little column. I think that mostly happens with copy paste, but other than that, I'm not sure how much that happens.
Lizzie, do you think it's better to use Google Sheets or Excel for the FMEA table?
Probably Excel. It's just not something I don't think our team uses very much. We use a lot of Drive, so Sheets is definitely where we put that. But Excel is really useful, and it has a lot of more features than the Sheets does. So I would recommend using Excel over this. But if your team mostly focuses on Drive, just do Sheets because it's not marginally better, it's just a little bit more convenient. That's not math. Okay, so here's an FMEA table error. It did 2 times 3 times 1 and it got 84. That's not how that works. So if this happens, do show formulas and you'd see it's getting something from G4. So it's taking that, but it should be doing, what should it be doing? It should be, wait, hold on. That's, oh, it's, what is it doing? So G4H4, oh, it's this. Okay. So instead of a capital I, it turned into a 1. So it did times 14, which made the 84, which it was definitely not. There we go. We have another 6. So if this happened during a competition, not exactly sure what would you do. I think you would just run over the code and see what went wrong and double check your phones.
Do you maybe want to show the like pit checklist and how that works?
Yeah. So the template provided does have a pit checklist. This one, I added a little bit more lines and it's blue just like everything else. And just say you need to start your match FMEA table. We We actually have not used this yet, but it would be very helpful to make sure like what's happening in different matches. So let's say we started this. We could check that off, and now it's a darker blue. So once you have more things added, the things that have not been done will stand out more.
All right. Are there any other questions out there? All right, I think it's been a while. So I'd like to thank the Iron Maidens very much for that, for all that information. That's a great spreadsheet.